We've all seen dinosaurs on screen, but not many people know what really goes on behind these scenes. Rebirth takes it to a whole new level. They use everything from simple green screens to full-on CG. Let's take a look at how it all actually comes together in the end. Behind the Mosasaurus scene is a massive production effort. We're talking about hydraulic rigs, open ocean shoots, CGA, and even references to whales and orcas. The whole thing was filmed in parts, some out in the open sea, some on a studio set in Malta. There, they built an 8-axis hydraulic rig that rocked the boat to simulate a tail strike or crashing wave. Water was dumped manually straight onto the deck so the actors could really feel the pressure. Scarlett Johansson recalled standing under the blazing sun while water blasts hit from above, and there was nowhere to hide. Everyone went through dive training just to be able to handle scenes like that. As for the Mosasaurus itself, it's fully CGI, but they treated it like a real animal. Its movement was inspired by humpback whales, and its attacks were based on orcas and crocodiles. Even the lip animation was done by hand. No motion capture, just studying animal footage can make it all feel seamless. Part of the sequence was shot on a real ship, the Essex, sailing in the actual Mediterranean. The crew was literally out there on the ocean, then matched those shots with tank footage in post. This was one of the most technically demanding and visually epic scenes in the film, a perfect example of how modern effects can still honor the spirit of classic filmmaking. Here's how they actually brought the Mutodon to life. They costumed performers, live sound cues for the actors, and practical effects straight out of the 90s. Mutodon is one of the most unusual dinosaurs in Rebirth, and what makes it stand out is that its movements weren't just CG, they were physically performed on set. The creature's head was worn by actor Ed Wood, while Tom Wilton, the lead puppeteer, handled the motion. Every twitch, tilt, and movement, that was their performance, later enhanced with CGA. During filming, the puppeteers didn't just move the rig, they made sounds live on set, like growls or stomps, but the actors had something to react to in real time. It made the performances feel way more natural, like the dinosaur was really there. Then there's the Indian store scene. That whole set was custom built to fit the Mutodon's size, from the width of the aisles to ceiling height, even the exact spot where the creature could crash through the roof. There was even a moment where someone suggested blocking the door with a mop, but that looked ridiculous, so they went with a milk cart instead. They tested it too. One person shoved the cart, someone else pushed from the other side like the dinosaur was breaking through. This wasn't just visual effects, it was mechanical precision, stagecraft, and total coordination with the cast. Mutodon felt real, not because of how well it was rendered, but because it was physically performed in the space. The T-Rex scene was actually pulled straight from the original Jurassic Park script, but it's only now, thanks to modern tech, that they were finally able to bring it to life. The riverboat chase with the Tyrannosaurus in Rebirth isn't a new idea. It's a revived sequence from back in 1993, written into the screenplay based on Michael Crichton's novel, but never filmed due to technical limitations. It sat in the archives for 30 years until David Cope brought it back. This time they shot it from all angles, out in the open sea near Malta with real boats and real actors, on a hydraulic rig in a studio to control motion, in the jungles and waterfalls of Thailand for natural backgrounds, and at the Whitewater Centre in the UK to simulate wild river currents. The actors even dove into the water themselves after going through intense dive training. To help them interact with the creature, the crew gave them an animatronic T-Rex head or claw to focus on during takes, something real, play off. The entire sequence was stitched together shot by shot, mixing real water footage with CG without a single moment where the illusion breaks. ILM built a digital T-Rex that matched every splash and boat movement perfectly. Director Gareth Edwards shot the entire film on film, literally to bring back the feel of the original Jurassic Park movies. Instead of using digital cameras, he decided to shoot Rebirth entirely on 35mm with the same Panavision lenses they used back in the day. The goal was simple: bring back that classic look, not through filters or effects, but through the texture of the frame itself. And that choice changed everything, from the color tone to how scenes were physically built. They skipped artificial lighting wherever they could and went with natural sunlight, adjusting the sets based on the sun's position. Cinematographer John Mathieson literally rotated set models using a compass to catch the right light on film. They even aligned building facades by checking sun tracker apps on their phones. Steven Spielberg fully supported the idea, not just as a producer but emotionally. He called during tough shoot days, gave feedback, and stayed involved throughout. This wasn't just nostalgia, it was a practical return to the language of 90s filmmaking. All those jungle scenes, they were shot in Thailand. Everything was real: the jungle, the waterfalls, the spiders, the massive cliffs. Most of the film wasn't shot on sound stages, but in the real jungles of Thailand. Heat, humidity, snakes, spiders, sudden tides. And there were quite a few locations too: national parks, waterfalls, mangrove swamps, beaches, rivers. Edwards straight up said, "Filming in the swamps was so intense that the actors weren't even told about the dangers, just to avoid panic." And according to him, this might be the last movie he dares to shoot in the ocean. One of the biggest challenges, the tides, the window between we've started shooting and everything's underwater was 5 hours max. In that kind of setup, you had to place the camera, the stunts, and the takes with total precision, no room for error. The stunt cliff was another beast, 70 feet high, built at Elstree with real rope descents. Then it was blended with the background filmed in Thailand, so everything looked like one seamless environment. To create the river scene for the T-Rex, they recreated a flooded quarry, and the water itself was modeled at Lee Valley in the UK, where there's real whitewater flow. And even in all that chaos, the crew didn't forget about the environment. They collected 2.5 tons of trash from the beaches, and divers pulled old fishing nets off the reefs. In Rebirth, the cast was completely refreshed. Not a single actor from the previous films, no nostalgia. Scarlett Johansson, Mahershala Ali, Luna Blaze, Jonathan Bailey. All new, no connection to the earlier cycle. It was a deliberate move, a reboot with new rules, no cameos, no fan service, and right away, a harsh immersion. The first days of filming took place on a remote island where the whole crew lived in a motel straight out of the 90s. Mahershala Ali flat out said he couldn't sleep because of cockroaches in the bed. At some point, it basically became the motto: wild conditions, wild scenes, wild dinosaurs. Interestingly, the film could look very different. Jennifer Lawrence and Amanda Seyfried both turned down the lead role. Zora Bennett, Glenn Powell also stepped away at the final stage, and director David Leitch left altogether due to creative differences with Universal. The result? Not just another sequel, a full-on restart. For Scarlett Johansson, Rebirth isn't just a role, it's the fulfillment of a dream she had been waiting on for 15 years. Since 2009, she had been trying to get into the franchise, and only now did it finally happen. Her filming experience was pretty tough and uncompromising. The Mosasaurus scene, a 30-foot hydraulic rig, sun in her face, water blasting from above, no stunt double. Johansson herself called those days brutal but thrilling. Together with Jonathan Bailey, she did climbing stunts on locations in Thailand and Malta, strapped into double harnesses that left bruises after every take. This wasn't just a set, it was a physical challenge, and she gave it everything: stamina and emotion. Her character, Zora Bennett, is the new central figure in the Jurassic World. Johansson became the face of this reboot, proving she could carry the whole film without relying on the shadow of the old franchise. One of the strongest visual scenes in Rebirth is the temple with the extraction of fluid from the egg, and it was a pure homage to Indiana Jones, no direct quotes, but with the exact same feeling. James Cline had long dreamed of doing something in the style of Raiders of the Lost Ark, and here he got the perfect chance. Not just to build a set, but to capture the spirit of adventure, ritual, a lost civilization. Stone walls, narrow passages, dim lighting, everything worked for the image. When the scene was first shown to the team, Frank Marshall, producer of Indiana Jones, walked onto the set. His line was simple: "Feels like Indy could be here." For Cline, that was the sign everything was done right. The temple doesn't look like a scientific lab. It feels like part of a completely different movie, mythical, old, with a taste of 1980s Hollywood. The scene with the ship Essex is one of the most technically complex in all of Rebirth. Everything came together here: real ocean, hydraulic rig, and a simulated monster hit. Part of the suit was done directly in the Mediterranean Sea, using an old ship that was bought and modified for the film, and at the same time, a full-scale gimbal was built in a studio in Malta to replicate the same waves. The special effects team, led by Neil Corbett, literally drenched the front of the ship with water. At the moment of the hit from the Mosasaurus, the structure would shake, and everything could be physically felt. To stitch it all together, the set designers matched textures down to the pixel: concrete, wood, rust, ocean. The goal was simple, so the audience wouldn't be able to tell what's studio and what's real ocean. Essex became not just a backdrop, but the centerpiece of visual realism. In Rebirth, light wasn't just background, it was a tool. The sets were literally built following the path of the sun, aligning scenes with natural lighting instead of studio lights. Cinematographer John Mathieson, together with the art department, would manually rotate scale models of the sets to see how the shadows would fall. If the sunset had to be in a frame, they just turned the model to face south. The key tool was simple: regular iPhone sun trackers would show the exact position of the sun for any given day and hour. Thanks to that, actors, props, and cameras were positioned with degree-level precision, all for that perfect light on film. In the jungles of Thailand, it got even trickier: narrow beams of sunlight between the trees, constantly changing weather, and limited time. Some scenes had to be rescheduled or quickly reworked right on set. Everything depended on the real sun, not on lamps. It's old school, when the shot was built with light, not with filters. Thank you to everyone who watched the video up to this point, and see you in the next video.